What is the number one tool that you will recommend every SEO have in their toolbox?
One SEO tool that every SEO needs at some point is what allows all of us to have access to the same crawl data. The tool also does really well identifying JavaScript crawling errors. The second one is which enables sort of custom ability to integrate ChatGPT directly into the platform. It does not have the server option, but the ChatGPT integration is pretty game changing.
What is the number three tool?
So the third one is the only tool that directly gives you insights into how Google is interpreting your site, its content. Visually, you can start to get a sense of what's happening within the platform. The fourth tool is for someone who may be newer to SEO. Tool number 5 it's an important tool. Maybe you could argue it's not an SEO tool.
What's tool number 6?
Tool number 6 it's a good option for site audits.
But I feel the next one is not in the same trend though.
So tool number 7, we use it for very individual uses.
Number 8 then.
Number 8 is we have a really useful tool for no cost at all. Tool number 9 is basically at the top of every query you do now. And number 10 is arguably one of the best free reporting platforms. So number 11, I feel like it would be...
Welcome to SEO Gurus. In today's episode, we welcome Jon Clark. Jon is the managing partner and chief SEO at Moving Traffic Media, who brings over 17 years of digital marketing expertise to the table. A former national SEO practice lead at Razorfish, Jon founded his own agency 6 years ago and has since launched a passion project, the Nomad Coffee Club, combining his professional skills with his passion for coffee. When not optimizing for search strategies or perfecting his pour-over, this proud girl dad is dedicated to both his family and helping businesses thrive in the digital world. This episode is brought to you by GHA Marketing, and we hope you'll enjoy a conversation with Jon. So, Jon, you've authored the article on a Search Engine Journal, which is named 116 Top Free SEO Tools. I wanted to know more about that, but 116 tools in one podcast episode would have been maybe a bit too much. So I believe today we're going to talk about the 11 tools every SEO should have in their tool belt. So I don't know, let's maybe kick off with the first one, right? What is the number one tool, or at least the first one that you will recommend every SEO have in their tool belt?
So I think one SEO tool that every SEO needs at some point is a tool focused on evaluating and identifying technical issues with the site. So the first one that I would recommend is Sitebulb. They have both a server and a desktop application. Our preference, or the reason that we've sort of chosen Sitebulb as our sort of enterprise technical tool, is for the cloud serving option. It allows the tool, it allows our entire distributed team. We all work remotely, so it allows all of us to have access to the same crawl data via the cloud rather than running individual crawls on our machines. So we can all sort of access the same data, and generally just saves us a lot of time. We're not recrawling the site multiple times. I think the other great thing about it, and there are other tools that offer this as well, but we set up weekly crawls of all the accounts that we manage or all the websites that we manage. And so we have regular sort of incoming technical data. So if there is ever an issue, we always have sort of a historical reference to go back to, and it really helps us sort of pinpoint, when something might have happened. The tool also does really well identifying JavaScript crawling errors. So a lot of development technologies are moving more to these JavaScript frameworks, which come with their own sort of unique SEO challenges, and sometimes diagnosing those can be a challenge. So Sitebulb really provides some great insight into how JavaScript is rendering different content across sites as well. So that would be our first sort of important tool in your tool belt.
So it's funny because the first differentiating factor that you mentioned is the fact that it will all be stored and operated from a cloud server versus like a local one. So is that relevant only for the people who are indeed like you, right, and your team operating from different locations and kind of remotely? Or is it also a tool that will just allow you to do much or better or faster than other tools doing the same type of job?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think some of this depends on the quality of the machine that you're working on. So if, there isn't a lot of RAM, or, you're working with other, heavy bandwidth tools, like maybe you're, I don't know, working in Photoshop and also running a crawl at the same time, or working with really big Excel data sheets and trying to run a crawl native or locally on your machine. We've had countless situations where, that Excel sheet will break or the whole machine will freeze. And so if you're able to sort of offload that to the cloud in general, it just frees up the machine in a lot of different ways. The other thing is, for really big sites, years ago, I would have to set up a crawl and keep my laptop or keep my computer open overnight so it would continue to run. And, my wife happened to walk by and see it open. Wow, why is that open? Shuts it, right? The whole crawl stops. So, again, like offloading that to the cloud sort of removes that as a, potential issue for the crawl stopping or, it breaking or what have you. So, and we're, we don't have like an IT team, so Sitebulb sort of manages the whole server network, and any downtime sort of falls to their responsibility, not us. So it sort of offloads that technical component as well.
Never underestimate how to say this in a corporate manner, the willingness of your wife to wanting to do things live and shutting down your laptop when it's actually running a crawl. Cool. Okay, makes a lot of sense. What's the second tool that you would recommend everybody have in their tool? Well, everybody, at least the SEO.
So the second one is Screaming Frog, and there is a lot of similarities between Screaming Frog and Sitebulb. I think what really sets Screaming Frog apart from Sitebulb is the most recent release that they came out with, which enables sort of custom ability to integrate ChatGPT directly into the platform. So it sort of, again, opens up some different options for you when you're looking to crawl a site, extract data, create recommendations at scale that would otherwise be a little bit more difficult to do, in the platform itself. And so Screaming Frog, again, a lot of very similar capabilities. It does not have the server option, but the ChatGPT integration is pretty game changing.
I see you noted and mentioned some stuff around this. So when you mentioned that Screaming Frog would be able to scrape specific data, what data are you looking for exactly when you mention this? And that's I guess something that potentially other tools don't propose, whilst you see it as relevant and important, which is why I guess Screaming Frog is literally the number 2 tool that you mentioned. So what type of specific data are we talking about here?
So I think this data can be infinite in nature. Some of it might be competitive. Some of it might be for analysis. So what would be one example? We do a lot of sort of content audits, and we're looking for content decay in many cases where, maybe there's some content that's been published years ago. It's no longer relevant from a topic perspective, or maybe it's outdated. So one thing you could use is sort of identifying where that date is in the blog post. You could scrape that date down and associate it with an individual URL. And then you can start to do some analysis against when that content was published, performance metrics associated with that URL, and potentially identify, content that really needs to be updated. In other cases, it may be on the competitive side. You might want to be scraping, the affiliate links that they're using, or how many heading tags that they're using, in their blog content or something like that. So I think there's a lot of different applications depending on what you're looking for. And the integration of ChatGPT allows you to do that a little bit more seamlessly, through specific commands and prompts.
What is the number 3 tool that everybody should have in their tool belt, or at least, again, SEOs? What do you have for us here, Jon?
So the third one, it's very common, Google Search Console. I think there is just an infinite number of data points that you can pull out of that platform. It's the only tool that directly gives you insights into how Google is interpreting your site, its content, the links that they're associating with the domain, different ways to manage how Google's crawling your site, right? It's really the only tool that allows you to look under the hood, if you will, specifically in terms of how Google views the site. And I think what makes Google Search Console powerful is obviously just the data that's in there, but some of the plugins that you can sort of layer on top of that. So there's a lot of plugins that we use to make this data even more insightful, but one that we use is called Google Search Console Enhanced Analytics. We're pulling data out of Google Search Console constantly for reporting and just, quick analysis. And so we're always sort of using the filtering for dates and things like that. The great thing about this plugin is it gives you sort of a one-click option to compare month over month, year over year, add percentages directly into Google Search Console. So visually, you can start to get a sense of what's happening within the platform, rather than having to download everything to an Excel sheet or some other tool and sort of seeing those percentages there. So that's one tool that we use probably daily, just because it removes a couple of incremental steps to get down to the data you're looking for, and over time, right, that adds up in aggregate. Another one is better rejects in Search Console. So there's been a lot of great posts out in the industry around how to use rejects to get, different data points within Google Search Console. This plugin actually pulls in some very commonly used rejects commands. So again, rather than sort of a copying and pasting, it's sort of a one-click button, filters down data based on whatever rejects you're looking for. So, you can quickly pull out, searches that are looking for reviews, or queries that are starting with who, what, when, where, why, then, all that sort of stuff. So it makes it, again, very much more usable with very quick actions versus having to do a lot of copying and pasting, filtering, etc. The other one is, so over the past, year or 2 years, there's been, I don't even know how many algorithm updates, and a lot of anxiety comes with each one in terms of how a site's going to be performing. So there's a plugin that we just started to use, which is called GSC Guardian. The cool thing about this one is it sort of overlays your performance graphs with some of the larger algorithm updates. So you can sort of visually see directly within Google Search Console or maybe how impactful those algorithm updates have been specifically to your data. So I think one of the challenges is always sort of aligning the impact of that algorithm update to, ups and downs in traffic. And this sort of allows you to see that very, very easily. I think the other cool thing about it is in universal analytics, you used to be able to add annotations. When they rolled out Google Analytics 4, they sort of removed that as an option. So this plugin also allows you to add annotations directly into Google Search Console. So let's say you're rolling out a redesign, or maybe you added the 301 redirect to a really important URL. You can sort of annotate that directly in Google Search Console using this plugin. And again, sort of visually see what the impacts of that might be. So it's a really useful tool, both for reporting purposes, but also just analysis around algorithm updates.
Yeah, so we're gonna not count this one as 3 different tools, but one, because it's all in the Search Console. But that offers quite an extensive view indeed. So I have 2 questions on this. Well, I have 1 question and 1 observation. So I'm gonna start with the question. The question is, Jon, you mentioned a Google tool only in the third position. Is there any particular reason to that? Because I'm like, when we're thinking about SEO, obviously there is Google coming with it, right? Of course, we have other search engine machines and so on. It's fine, but Google is the main one. So how come you position the Search Console only in position 3 and not like, hey, at least the first one should be a Google tool, right? Well, any reason for that reasoning?
So I think for us, like we sort of lead with the technical foundation first. You know, when we start with any new client, it's one of the first big deliverables that we provide. And you know, there may be folks who have differing opinions on the, you know, impact of, you know, technical SEO, but just from our history, it's always been something that is impactful. It's sort of one of those things where if you build the solid foundation, then you can sort of move on to performance. So for us, you know, our first two typical big deliverables at an engagement are a technical audit and a deep dive into keyword research, intent, et cetera. And then once we start implementing, then we start to get into reporting. Google Search Console is always part of that technical audit, maybe less so on the performance or the keyword reporting side. So I guess for me, as I was pulling these tools together, I was thinking, you know, what's the one that we would almost typically always start with? Again, for big sites that are releasing new pages, new content, I think that technical component is always evolving and changing, just as sites sort of evolve and change. And so you always have to always stay on top of it. Maybe less so for smaller sites, but the types of sites that we work with, there's, you know, every time they release something, you know, there's a opportunity to crawl and just make sure everything is still flowing correctly.
No, and I love how, you know, the reasoning is, hey, what do our clients ask us the most? Because this is also your insight from the market, right? Which is, hey, we come to you because we need a technical expert to first help us fix our website. And then we're going to look at what our website brings us. But like reporting comes after actually making things right. So I love that. The observation.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, because
Go ahead.
I was going to say, we get a lot of clients who come to us after a migration and traffic has plummeted. So looking at the query data in Google Search Console is maybe less important as to comparing the old site versus the new. And again, that's where those technical tools come into handy for sure.
And so the observation I wanted to make on this is because we're really staying on the technical part of things, which is super interesting because that's the part I know a little bit less of. But I'm new to SEO, and it's going to show with the thing I'm about to say. But like when I started to learn about off-page SEO and how to track links, how to understand the domain authority, how to track the quality of the links that you're getting, and so on. We have multiple tools out there. The one that we're using is Ahrefs, which I suspect we're going to talk a bit later on in this episode. And I was like, okay, Ahrefs is the most comprehensive one when it comes to link tracking. But then I check a few other websites. I also see that the links that I know I got, which are not no follows and which are indexed, are not necessarily showing in one platform or the other. I was like, damn. And I very recently learned that in the Search Console, you actually have a link tracker. So it won't be as extensive to tell you like the domain authority or the domain rating, for instance, because obviously Google doesn't really give that away anymore. But it's still very, very good to see all the links that you get and who else. Like if Google Search Console displays certain links, you can be sure that at least Google sees it for your website. So an additional one that I want to squeeze in here, and it's not even an additional plugin that you need to add, it's just in the Search Console itself, one of the last kind of submenu you have is links, and you can see all the links and you can have the details for all that. So kind of a cool feature as well.
Absolutely.
But please, go ahead. What's the fourth tool that everybody should have in their tool belt, John?
So it's actually a good segue. So Bing Webmaster Tools is the fourth. You know, again, if you look purely at market share, Google is obviously the leader. I think what Bing Webmaster Tools does, though, is offers some sort of unique tools that Google Search Console doesn't. So, for example, they have a keyword research sort of tool directly in the Webmaster Tools platform. They provide an SEO analyzer. So, you know, for someone who maybe doesn't have a Screaming Frog or doesn't have a Sitebulb, or is maybe newer to SEO, simply running the SEO analyzer on your site in Bing Webmaster Tools is a great free way to get some initial insights around things that you might, you know, look to improve. It's not nearly as comprehensive as those other tools, but it'll at least point you in the right direction, give you some insights into how Bing is sort of seeing the website. And then they also have a link analyzer. And I think the interesting thing about, doing the link audits or, evaluating links that you're acquiring is the data in Google Search Console is sort of filtered, right? They're not going to show you 100% of everything they know. Bing is the same. You have tools like Ahrefs, SEMrush, et cetera, who all have their own sort of link reporting. There's Moz has some link data as well. So oftentimes what we do for link audits is we sort of take an aggregation of all of the link sources, and that gives us the most comprehensive picture of what the backlink portfolio looks like. So we export links from Google Search Console, Bing, Ahrefs, SEMrush, Moz, sort of do a massive dedupe, and all of those links combined sort of gives you a much broader view of what the total backlink portfolio looks like. So that's a great way to get a little bit more data outside of what just Google is showing you, which again, we know is sort of filtered down. So if you want the most comprehensive view of that, really combining those sources together is a great way to go.
I love it. And so how much weight does Bing have, not when it comes to search volumes, obviously, but like when you're going to do a typical SEO audit, like how much, or like keyword research or SEO analyzer or link analyzer, how much do you rely on Bing and how much like attention will you give it compared to Google? Like what's kind of the balance? Because I guess the substance of the question is, do you look at Bing like almost as seriously as you would look at any Google's insights? Or is it just like, hey, Google says this, actually it's also interesting to note and to see that Bing says that? Or how do you make the balance between the two?
So what I would say is we optimize for Google first. I mean, most of all of our analysis and our approach is Google focused, right? We do work with some B2B clients who, just by nature of who their customer is, right? They're working at a much larger corporation. The corporation is, a Microsoft first organization, and so they lock sort of the applications you can use. So by default, right, the employees are sort of forced down the Bing route. So on the paid media side, oftentimes we'll see slightly better performance on Bing versus Google for B2B specifically. Not always, but sometimes. So that would be one maybe nuance. I would say the other thing is Bing's ability to execute JavaScript and sort of return that content is a little bit behind. I think we've always sort of seen that compared to Google's abilities. So we have one client, for example, they're on the Salesforce CMS, very heavy JavaScript driven. And we kept seeing the wrong meta descriptions and the wrong sort of icons showing up, and it became a little bit of an investigation as to where Bing was pulling these from. And turned out they were using an older cached version of the content. And so they hadn't rendered the updated JavaScript to get the updated meta description. So there's situations like that where there is, some differences between the two platforms, but for the most part, I mean, if you're optimizing for Google, you're sort of optimizing for both engines.
Oh, 100%. That makes sense. Tool number 5. What do you recommend, John?
So tool number 5 is Google Analytics. We've talked a lot about sort of analyzing and, looking at performance. I think Google Analytics is one of those love-hate tools, especially after they migrated over to Google Analytics 4. But I think the reality for us, at least, is we tend to be a performance agency. So our clients are typically holding us to some sort of KPI, lead, sales, et cetera. And in order to report on that properly, you have to have some sort of analytics platform. And Google Analytics is the lion's share of, who our accounts live on in terms of their source of truth. Being able to understand the data that's in there, being able to analyze that data, being able to distill it down into something that, your day-to-day client as well as an executive meaning your day-to-day client's boss is going to be able to understand is important. And, again, it's the end points of all the work that you're doing on the technical and keyword research side. So it's an important tool. Maybe you could argue it's not an SEO tool, but, for us being, hold into a performance KPI, it sort of becomes an SEO tool, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. No, and so if you don't track it, you don't. What's the quote? If you don't track it, you don't manage it, right? So any data that you're eventually trying to influence, if you're not actively tracking it to be able to say, hey, okay, we made this change 2 weeks ago, and since 2 days we're starting to see this as an impact, whether it's positive or negative, then you can act on it. So it's all great and absolutely awesome to make changes to a website, whether that's on or off page, right? But if you're not actually tracking what's happening and the consequences that it has, you're not going anywhere.
Right.
And so obviously Google Analytics, and I love the love-hate relationship that you just mentioned, that represents it quite well. Which is indeed one of the consequences. But hey, we have to do with the biggest actor in the place, right?
Well, it's one of those things. Like in this industry, what's the quote? The only constant is change, right? Whether it's tools or else, algorithms, right? Like all those things. And this is just one of those instances where it just requires you to learn something different.
Exactly.
Par for the course, I guess.
Okay, what's tool number 6?
Tool number 6 is Ahrefs. This is, so we have Sitebulb for our sort of technical tool of choice. Ahrefs is our agency. I'll call it keyword tracking tool of choice, but we use it for an infinite number of ways. You mentioned the link, largest link, backlink portfolio, or database, I should say. We use it a lot for link analysis. We use it a lot for keyword research. The ability to save keyword lists, just easily move them over to keyword tracking is ideal. The Chrome toolbar that also allows you to do sort of one-click analysis of indexing, content, heading tags, title meta, all that sort of stuff is another attribute of Ahrefs that we use on a daily basis. And similar to Sitebulb, it's a good option for site audits. So again, you can set up whatever cadence you want to regularly crawl the site. Again, I would argue it's not as in-depth as a tool like a Screaming Frog or Sitebulb, but they're adding new features to that ability for crawling regularly as well. So again, it's a great stopgap for identifying major issues like, I don't know, they block the entire site from crawling or something like that. So again, great tool, a lot of features. We've been using it since we formed the agency, so it's sort of just grown with us as we've grown.
No, it's, and that's for the personal anecdote, that's the tool that's not made me discover SEO, but when I discovered SEO and start, trying to understand a bit better this awesome world, Ahrefs is the tool that for me has been the most intuitive, and tried a couple obviously in the sphere, but like Ahrefs is the go-to for us and what we do. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So align on this one, John. But I feel the next one is not in the same trend though, or at least exactly the same trend. So what's the next tool?
So tool number 7, I added SEMrush here. It is not a tool. What's the right way to say this? We use it for very individual uses. They do have a lot of features that Ahrefs doesn't. I think it can be argued how good they are. But one feature that I actually like that they have is around keyword intent. So I think that's a feature that Ahrefs really needs to integrate. And I think the way that, content optimization and even Google's algorithms are trying to get better at keywords and their associated content with the intent of the searcher, I feel like this is an important.
Hey, if you're still listening to this, you probably find this conversation interesting, and that means that others might too. So the best way you can support this podcast for free is to leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening to this show. This helps the podcast more than I could say. It means other SEOs can learn and get access to our amazing guests, and that will mean the world to me. All right, with that being said, back to the episode.
Attribute that is often lost in the keyword research exercise, especially if it's sort of driven by the client. They have this holy grail keyword in their mind, but it may have a totally different intent than what they could actually rank for. And I think you see a lot with this in the recent updates that really hammered some of the affiliate sites, were they really the best option to be returned for, e-commerce related queries. And so I think you saw a huge shift for the types of content that was being returned. So that's one feature in SEMrush that I really like. They do have a AI writing assistant and sort of the ability to sort of build out some topic clusters. Again, I wouldn't say that on the first pass, it's like totally ready to go, wrapped up piece of content. I still think there's a lot of heavy editing that needs to go into it. But if you're looking for a tool, an all-in-one tool that can get you a little bit closer to a final product, I think that does, that can serve its purpose. And maybe the other area that I would give them a slight leg up on is if you're specifically in the local space. I think they do a little bit better on local SEO reporting than Ahrefs. Again, I think Ahrefs is a great sort of enterprise, national focused tool. If you're looking a little bit more for local specific, SEMrush, I think, has a little bit better local reporting capabilities. You have strong candidates or strong advocates, I should say, for each respective tool. Our preference is Ahrefs, but we recognize that SEMrush has some reasonable positives.
And we should. So where who my heart belongs to.
Right.
But a quick word on the AI writing assistant, because that's the seventh tool that we talked about. And that's the first time that you mentioned AI. So obviously, we are recording this episode, although it's going to be an evergreen piece of content. We are recording this episode on the 8th of July, 2024. So ChatGPT is, a bit more than 2 years old now. We have a bunch of tools, and actually AI tools or AI-enabled tools or tools that have added AI capabilities. You get me. How important is this, as a general question, for all the tools that we mentioned, John? How important is it for you that those service providers and software providers within the SEO space actually integrate AI capabilities? Is it something that you're actively looking for now? And how easier does it make your life, if at all? How do you strike the balance between, hey, okay, we have this tool, but this other one does exactly the same thing. Oh, but by the way, they have an AI thing. Is it just hype, or, I guess that's multiple questions inserted in one question, but AI in tools, what are your thoughts?
I think, any way that you can speed the process to get to a final deliverable is a positive thing. If you think about the agency model, it's typically the number of hours you put towards something is really where agencies sort of are made or broken, right? If you're spending too much time making revenue to support that time, you start to lose money. So I think the integration of AI and its capabilities are very positive. I would say for us, we have not found an application where, specifically for content creation, we have not found an application where set a custom GPT and sort of forget it, right? Just take that content down and publish it as fresh.
Right.
There's typically a lot of heavy editing that needs to go into it. Where we typically see AI being used really well is, again, to take or distill down a lot of data and get to an outcome or some sort of analysis or like a 75% done project, and then sort of add that human layer to it. I think it depends on the tool as to how much it's hype versus reality. I think there's some applications where we just added AI to this thing because we're expected to, or it'd be weird if we didn't have something AI and all of our competitors are saying something about it. But the use cases are almost infinite to apply AI to what we do, again, to speed the process to get to that output. So yeah, I don't know. I think it really depends on the tool as to whether it's meaningful or not.
Okay, but the fact that you mentioned the one from SEMrush is because SEMrush is doing a decent job enough at integrating AI in a useful manner?
Yeah, then I think so. I think what made me mention it was it is a distinct difference between what Ahrefs provides and what SEMrush provides. So Ahrefs, for example, does not have a content creation at all within their platform. So if you SEO guy are looking for sort of an all-in-one tool that has this component along with keyword tracking and maybe some technical analysis, like SEMrush may be a better fit for you. If you're looking purely for analysis, large databases and standard SEO tools, then Ahrefs is probably a better match. There are other writing platforms that I would maybe give a leg up over SEMrush. I actually didn't include them here in this list, but Phrase .io is one of our favorites. If you're looking for more of a content writing tool that utilizes AI to provide some features.
Tool number 8 then. What do you have for us, Jon?
Number 8 is Google Trends. Again, not a mind-blowing tool, but I think what we're often looking for when trying to align a performance change, Google Trends can uncover a lot of insights. So, for example, we work a lot with real estate and healthcare clients, and a lot of what we see can be seasonal based or trend based. So, if there's I'll use COVID as an example, right? That trend line was obviously a spike up, and we could attribute that to certain changes in traffic and performance. Real estate, for example, is very cyclical, meaning, you have some of the summer real estate season and then in the winter it sort of comes down. So we try to align where we're seeing performance gains or maybe shifts based on trend data. And I think there's a tool that we sort of layer on top of Google Trends called Glimpse. They have a free option and a premium option. The free option is great. Definitely recommend it. So if you go to Google Trends, Glimpse just, again, takes that data and expands on it in a really sort of beautiful way. So it gives you a lot of additional insights into the data that Trends is putting out. Gives you a little bit of a better view into trending topics. You can set up alerts. So if you're in a particular space and you want to understand when a trend in that space starts to spike, it adds some search volume to those trends as well. So you're not just looking at a trend number a trend term. You're getting some estimates around search volume as well. And, for a lot of companies, being first or near first in a particular spike for a trend can be, game changing. So I think that's a big component of what we use Google Trends for. It's a good layer onto keyword research too. So again, if you don't have budget for Ahrefs or you don't have budget for SEMrush or something like that, using Google Trends data is a great, free keyword research platform. Layer Glimpse, the free version of Glimpse on top of that, and you have a really useful tool for no cost at all.
And I just literally downloaded Glimpse and added it as an extension to my Chrome because indeed that sounds amazing, and definitely gonna look into it. I need to spend much more time in Google Trends. The tool number 9 had me laugh. So go ahead, Jon. Tell us what number 9 is and why do you recommend it? And I'm actually also I have a question, but I'm going to keep it for once you describe the tool. So what is tool number 9?
So tool number 9 is, so we talked a little bit about keyword research with Google Trends, and my next line of thought was, well, what is another great platform for keyword research? And that would be Reddit. So if you think about Reddit's explosive growth since Google started integrating a lot of AI features into search results, Reddit's basically at the top of every query you do now. And so understanding keyword ideas, topics that people are talking about in Reddit can be really useful. So RedditInsights.ai is a tool that we started to play around with. and really easy to use. You have to download some Reddit threads to get data back, but once that's in a CSV, you upload the CSV, and it sort of automatically pulls down a whole bunch of different topics and basically keywords that you can start to either build content around or think about, putting a strategy together to go into those conversations and try to naturally, add links or add commentary to drive traffic back to your site. So it's a mix of sort of a keyword research tool, but also a potential amplification tool, right? If you can't get the ranking, try to get some content placed on sites that are. So a lot of different ways you could sort of use this. Not promoting spam in any way, but that is, we're definitely seeing a lot more spam on Reddit as a result of how they're gaining in traction. So the only thing I would add maybe an asterisk to this, and I haven't checked this, but I saw recently that Reddit updated their robots.txt file to minimize scraping quite a bit. I don't know if that's impacted this tool, but as of last week, it was working. So just a caveat there.
Okay, no, that makes sense. And so how do you put Quora, however we pronounce it properly in English, into all this? Mm-hmm. The reason I'm asking is because when you're trying to understand trends, what people are talking about, what people are asking about, Quora often comes at the top of the list as well. So is it something that you would also recommend looking into? Although I don't even know if they have a specific tool for that. But Reddit, Quora, any kind of mass forum, is it something that you recommend at least keeping an eye on?
Yeah, Quora is very similar to Reddit. We see lots of opportunities there. Again, you can use it for research, very similar to what you would use for Reddit. Again, it's a community or a forum, so there's opportunities to engage, publish content, try to find ways to naturally add value to the conversation, if that is in the form of a link drop. And again, it adds value to the conversation, that's completely acceptable. But yeah, I think Quora and Reddit are on the same playing field from that perspective. And I can't remember so you can do a site command in Google to identify threads from Quora that don't have a lot of comments, but have a lot of views. And I'm trying to remember the exact site command, but the goal is, again, to identify, maybe a topic or a question that is related to, your industry or client you're working with. That's getting a lot of views, meaning, traffic potential, but doesn't have a lot of comments. So if you can go in and add a really useful comment to that thread, you're more than likely to capture some of that traffic. So there's, again, ways you can use Quora very similar to Reddit to, identify areas of opportunity for traffic. And I think what a lot of people are understanding with the recent algorithm updates is relying solely on Google as your traffic source is not a good thing. And so diversification into Quora, Reddit, social platforms, you really need a distributed network of traffic to be able to survive, just because Google's algorithm updates have become so unpredictable.
And that's 100% true. And so coming from the podcast world, I'd say that's true for any platform, right? If you're killing it on a platform and you're getting like lots of traffic and therefore business from it, that's amazing. But the day these platforms kind of update its terms or algorithm or whatever, you have a topic that becomes not so trendy anymore on that platform or not so popular, then you end up just being like, losing 10, 20, 30, 40% of your traffic, and that has serious business impact. So I love that insight. I'm like, do not rely only on one source and make sure that you diversify if you can, right? So it's the same thing when you're starting out and when you're trying to figure out stuff, you're going to find one thing that works, double down on it, but then as soon as possible, should diversify and de-risk this.
All right, number 10 is Google Looker Studio. And, we talked about Google Search Console, we talked about Google Analytics. The reason we like Looker Studio is, again, it's free, and arguably one of the better reporting platforms, in addition to probably the best free reporting platform. One, because it natively syncs with other Google data sources, so it sort of automatically, easily sort of pulls that data in. You can also add third-party data sources, using Google Sheets to pull in ranking data, or databases, third-party tools. You can integrate Facebook data, LinkedIn data, etc. But the reason I included it is it's often thought of as sort of a KPI reporting-driven platform, which is true. But there's a lot of other ways that folks are figuring out how to sort of use this data through those integrations. So there is a great template that allows you to download Screaming Frog data, upload that, and it sort of analyzes that data in a more visual sort of graphical form. So again, I think one of the hardest things for clients is to sort of visualize what you're talking about from a technical perspective. So utilizing things like graphs, screenshots, stuff like that, really sort of gives a little bit better context to things that are maybe otherwise difficult to sort of visualize. And so we really like that as a use case for Looker Studio. There's also a lot of ways to use Looker Studio to visualize competitive data. So again, using a tool like Ahrefs, you can do a lot of competitive analysis, pull that down, sort of push it to Looker Studio, and again, have some really nice visuals to support that. There's a lot of different ways to slice and dice Google Search Console data. And one of the best use cases there is if you're working on specific URLs, you can sort of filter down to the URL level and compare period over period of total ranking growth for that particular URL. And so again, I think when you think about one of our biggest challenges as SEOs is aligning specific activity to business impact, being able to drill down to that level and sort of show that increase or decrease, maybe layer on Google Analytics data on top of it to show, sales or something like that. I think that's one of the beauties of Looker Studio is to be able to easily and for free drill into data in, really digestible, detailed way. So for most clients, this is our reporting platform. It allows us to create customized reports for each client. So again, each client has their own unique needs, both for the C-suite, but also for our day-to-day contacts. So oftentimes we'll create individualized reports for each audience. One, much more detailed in the weeds. One sort of high level, 10,000 foot view. Here's what's happening. But again, it allows us to customize based on each of our clients' needs, things that they care about. In some cases, customized metrics that they report on internally. So really, really nimble, useful application.
I had a little bit of experience with Looker Studio back in my consulting days. I did not like the tool because I find it hard to just to propose an opposing view from time to time, John. So the capacities, I wasn't actually able to go through all those capacities that you mentioned because for me, it was during my consulting years doing something very specific, but the tool is actually quite hard to wrap your head around. I'm not sure if that's a correct English expression here, but to learn the tool, to be able to understand everything it does, because you can basically connect any data from anywhere, but you need to understand how and be good at it, and then it's back to the you need good data, garbage in, garbage out. So you need to have good data to begin with, know how to connect it, know how to display it, and so on. Once you get your hands on it, and I saw some reporting and dashboards that some people were doing with it, completely crazy. But for a total beginner to like nail the question. It takes a bit of practice, I'd say. So that's the only disclaimer here.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. The capacity that you mentioned are like amazing, and actually I've seen it in action. But it requires a bit of a training time. Then it's free as well, so you also have to take that into account. But getting trained on it is the crux, and then once you're there, you can definitely kill it. Is it something is it a difficulty that you faced as well at the beginning, John, or not at all, and you just killed it right away with a...
There's definitely a learning curve. I think where it really gets complicated is when you're trying to, merge data from two data sources. That can get really complicated. Doing custom calculations, things like that. Sometimes even just lining up the date ranges and how we want those dates displayed can be a little frustrating. But out of the box, if you're just pulling regular reporting from Google Analytics or Google Search Console, it's pretty straightforward. It will take a little bit of practice, and you definitely need to go through a couple reports before it gets a little natural.
Right.
But again, for a free tool, the functionality is really hard to beat. So number 11, I feel like it would be remiss of us to not include something AI related. So I added ChatGPT here. I went back and forth when I was pulling this list together. I could list just 11 AI tools, but I felt like, there are technical related tools, there's keyword research related tools, there's reporting tools, and then ChatGPT can sort of, or AI tools, I guess, sort of fit across all of them. So that's sort of how I was thinking about it. And I don't know that there's a single use case for ChatGPT, but what I've been sort of digging into is creating custom GPTs for very specific use cases. And that's where I feel like the output is much higher quality. So, asking the tool to do something very generic or to create a long form article is just not a great use case. You get a lot of repetition. So there's a couple custom GPTs that I thought would be worth calling out. So we talked a little bit about algorithm updates and some of the challenges analyzing the pre and post impact. Mary Haynes came out with a custom GPT where you can basically upload a CSV of rankings pre and post, and it nicely sort of visualizes the impact of that. So again, from a visual perspective, which is much easier to digest for myself for sure, but also for clients, it does a really nice job of sort of naturally analyzing that data and outputting some insights. So that's, again, a very specific use case where you can get a lot of output from it. One of the ones that I've been playing around with more recently is Steve Toth pulled together what he calls the lazy keyword research GPT. There's a little bit of setup to get it running properly. But again, if you're looking for, a quick way to get some insights around keyword research without having to do a lot of what was previously a lot of manual sort of filtering and analysis, that's a great one to look into. And then not specifically GPT, but maybe a bonus in this sort of AI section is using Google Cloud's natural language API. So what we can do here, or what we have been doing here, is we've been copying and pasting our title tag recommendations, or maybe a meta description, or in some cases even the intro to a piece of content we're creating, and just letting Google tell us what sort of entities they're seeing in the content. So if they're returning a lot of entities that wouldn't make sense for the article, or isn't around the keyword or keywords that we're trying to optimize that article for, that would sort of give us a sense that we need to make some adjustments to that title tag or that meta description to align a little bit better. So I'm sure there's a way that you could build something similar for ChatGPT in terms of a custom GPT, but this is directly from Google, so we like that application. So I think this is where, at least for now, we're seeing a lot of use cases for AI. Very specific cases where you can sort of put some guardrails and some specific definitions around what you want the output to be. And in those cases, we tend to see a lot of, end result that's much closer to something we can, use or put in place. So that's how we're utilizing, AI, ChatGPT, and similar tools today.
Of that. And because you mentioned a few of them, but so the 3 plugins for Google Search Console, Glimpse, Reddit Insights.ai, but also the different case studies and additional articles that you mentioned, John. We're gonna all put this in the show notes. If you who are listening to this right now wants to have a go at that, we'll put all the links in the show notes. John, that was absolutely fantastic. Is there anything or any tool that's, not to make it a 12 must-have SEO tools, but is there anything else that you would have liked to tackle in this discussion that we haven't talked about?
There's another Google Chrome plugin that we use on a very regular basis called Check My Links. And again, it's a one-click in your browser and basically crawls or scrubs the page that you're on and identifies links that are broken, redirected, or serving a 200 status code, and it gives a sort of a color coding to each of them. So again, really, really fast way to get a sense of how that individual page is looking from a link perspective. The other suite of tools is Merkle's suite of SEO tools. So there's a lot of stuff in there that maybe some AI has replaced. So for example, schema creation and things like that. But if you're looking to analyze, hreflang mapping, they have a pre-rendering solution as well. So if you're trying to compare a JavaScript heavy site, pre and post render, they have a sitemap generator. So that it's a suite of tools. All of them are free. Another great resource, again, if you're strapped for cash or, just need a really quick one URL analysis, a great set of tools there. It's at technicalseo.com, which, you can't get a better domain name than that.
Amazing. We'll put all the links in the description. John, thank you so much for coming on SEO Gurus. Hey, thank you so much for making it to the end. For more content updates, visit our website at ghapodcast.com, and don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn for more tips and insights on SEO. See you in the next episode.